Hello there, everyone. Welcome to episode 82 of the Mike Vermain Show, the place where we do daily interviews with amazing, successful, interesting, awesome entrepreneurs. This is your host, Mike Thomas, and today on the show, I'm really happy to have a fellow Mainer, and some people say maniac, but Mainer, Jaime Tardy, on the show, and she's the host of the Eventual Millionaire. It's eventualmillionaire.com, which is what we're looking at right now if you're watching on the site. She interviews successful millionaires, and I guess if they're a millionaire, they must be successful. So she interviews millionaires. She's done over 70 of them, and she's trying to dig down into the successful habits. What makes millionaires different from the rest of us? So she's an amazing person, a great interviewer. I've got lots to learn from her. So I have her on the show today, and we're going to talk specifically about going to different events. There's all these events that people are talking about, whether it's, I guess it used to be called Blog World. She just recently went to an event out in, I believe, Las Vegas, but they're happening all the time. And whether you're doing internet marketing or if you're even in real estate or just other businesses, there's always events to go to. And it's hard to kind of like, what should you do when you go to the event? Should you go up to the big name people and shake their hand and tell them what your website is and tell them what you're doing, like how you should handle yourself? And she's got a great perspective on this because she's gone to these different events as an attendee and also as a speaker. So she can kind of see it from both viewpoints. So we're going to talk to her about that today. Also, there's nothing for sale today. Even if you want to bring out your credit card, you can't buy anything. But I would ask you, there's going to be a link to my iTunes channel. If you go to mikevermain.com/iTunes, if you can go there, and if you're watching right now, you'll go to that and you click on View in iTunes. There might be a little thing that will pop up to launch iTunes, and it should come up and look just like this. And if you go over and subscribe, and then sometimes if you try to click on the ratings and reviews, it won't let you, so you might either have to refresh it or type in up here Mike Vermain. So if I do that, and I find the Mike Vermain show here, and it will let you leave a rating. I've only got 3 ratings so far. So if you guys can help me out, give me a little more exposure on iTunes, I would really appreciate it. Go there, leave me a 5-star review, and if you do, I will read your review and give you a shout out on the next show. So appreciate that. Here's Jaime Tardy. We're here today with Jaime Tardy. Jaime, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on, Mike.
You're very welcome, and I'm glad that you made it. Jaime and I were, before the show, we were going back and forth. I think I was assuming you were on your iPhone or something, going back and forth over Skype because Jamie's also from Maine, and there's like a snowstorm or it's icy or something's going on where you are right now, and we almost didn't connect today. So I'm glad that we got you here.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. It's snowing like crazy. I mean, I really am from Maine and originally and live here now, and it's snowing like nuts and my windshield wipers broke, and therefore you can't really drive anywhere. So I had to get it fixed before I came, but I'm glad we made it.
And you're saying you really are from Maine and you live there. I'm the fake one. I'm the one who's Mike from Maine who lives in Istanbul. So, okay, you're the real one. I'm the fake one. Let's just get it out. Let's just
Maine
get it out.
No.
Okay, well, why don't we start off by people that don't know who you are yet, probably people who aren't millionaires. Let's have you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I run a site. It's called eventualmillionaire.com, and I interview millionaires kind of in the same format that what you're doing now. I've interviewed, I think, I'm getting up close to 90 different interviews. I just interviewed Seth Godin. I'm interviewing Dan Miller in a little bit. And so really exciting. What I think is one of the most amazing things is I live in a small town in Maine that has about 2,000 people, and I can connect with so many absolutely amazing people, and it doesn't matter where I live at all. So I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing over there, I think it's really cool that you have your specific niche of people you're interviewing, specifically millionaires. And I know people ask you this all the time, but I'm going to do it too. Why millionaires?
Okay, so ever since I was a little girl, I think I was like 8 for some reason, I wanted to be a millionaire. I have no idea where it came from. Just wanted to. My parents weren't well off or anything like that. I think I was like, money, that would be great. And I remember telling my mom when I was little that I wanted to be a millionaire, and she was like, "Well, then you should marry a rich man."
It's a good
And I was
idea.
like, "I know, right? Thanks, mom." But at the time, I think I was like 8, and I was like, boys are gross. I'm gonna do it myself. And so when I, you know what I mean, it sort of set up that when I was little into going and trying to achieve and earn money and stuff. And I went the other route. I went going to great college, spending tons of money on college, getting a 6-figure job out of college, which was great. But it sort of led me to this path of going, well, now how do I find what I actually love doing and still make my million? So I'm interviewing a whole bunch of other people that have done it so I can sort of learn from them too, just and hopefully share the journey along with everyone else.
Are you a millionaire yet?
No,
Oh.
no. Everybody keeps asking, not yet.
Don't you?
That's
Are
the
you waiting for
goal.
that day?
Eventual
That
goal.
day when someone asks you, "Are you a millionaire?" and you're like, "Yes, I am. I've done it."
I've I've had so many people email me and go, "Can I interview you on your show when when you become a millionaire?" I'm like, "No, I think I'm going to do a split screen. I'm going to interview myself." No.
I would watch it.
Sold. A million
Sold.
views.
Sold. A
Done.
million views
No.
done. And yeah, I remember watching a video on you that you done a while back, I think, about getting out of debt. It had like something like 80,000 views on it on YouTube, going from like $70,000 in debt or something. Or what was that about?
Yeah, that's funny. So yeah, when I made 6 figures, but we were in a lot of debt. So I was in $70,000 in debt. And that video, which is really funny, I read getrichslowly.org, which is all about getting out of debt. And I remember reading that when I was getting out of debt. And it was funny, they did a contest and I was trying to win like $500 or something. So I made this quick 2-minute video of like, how did you get out of debt? And I sort of told my little story. We paid off $70,000 in debt in about 16 months,
It's awesome.
which was crazy and insane. But it was really funny because it just started getting tons of views online. I'm like, and people are like, this doesn't explain very much. It's so short. And I'm like, but it was like for a this isn't, this wasn't meant for information. It was
Mhm.
just meant for, I was trying to win a contest. And I didn't win, but yes, I have tens of thousands of views on YouTube now.
You should check out. I don't. There's a guy. It's called Jeff Rose. I didn't.
Oh, I just hung out with Jeff last
Okay.
week.
Yeah, and he's
Yeah.
got his whole debt movement going on right now. I think it's debtmovement.com, and he's all about people getting out there and paying off their debt and becoming debt free. He's an awesome guy.
He is. I just met him for the first time last week, and I've been in his book that launches very shortly. So, yeah, he's super cool.
Cool. Well, let's talk about last week, which is I think what you're referencing. You just got back from the New Media Expo. How was it?
Really good. Thanks for asking, Mike.
Oh,
No, it was it was really good. I spoke about how to interview actually, and I like going to like it used to be called Blog World, now it's called New Media Expo, and I think there's like 1,500 or so people in attendance. It's pretty big. It was out in Las Vegas, and it was a ton of fun.
what is it all about? I mean, you've been there. I've seen the advertisements online and the webpage. I haven't been personally. So why don't you become the spokesperson for the New
Yeah.
Media Expo? Now, tell us what it was for you and what you got out of it.
See, they're gonna love me. I'll send this interview to them and be like, "See, I'm totally talking it all up. Pay me money.
Yeah.
I'll be your sponsor."
Woohoo.
No, I started the very first Blog World, very first conference I went to was Blog World about 3 years ago. My blog was like 6 months old. And what I really wanted to do was just sort of meet people, right? I do very well in person, right? I love meeting people. I think networking is huge and a big, big asset that a lot of people don't take advantage of because when you can build the relationship way further than just chatting on video or phone or anything like that, it makes a big difference. And so I went and didn't really know what to expect. I'd never really been to sort of a conference like that. And I just had an amazing time meeting so many people that were so much like me, right? I live in Maine. There's not very many people who do what I do
I
here.
know.
Well, you too. You're in Istanbul. So it is one of those things where you get to be around with like-minded people. You get to build really key relationships. And so that was huge for me. That's where I built a lot of the core relationship of the people that are really bigger in this space. You know, I mean, you've interviewed Pat Flynn. Pat was a good friend of mine, and that was the first time we met in person. And so that's when it starts to sort of build, right? So going back, that was one of the best things that I could have done. And I have a whole bunch of tips on what you can do before you can do that, which we can get into later. But in general, going to conferences, to me, to actually meet face to face is hugely important.
So when you originally went to that conference, that was your first one 3 years ago, and were you invited to speak at the time, or was that just you were going as an attendee?
Yeah, I knew nothing. I was going as an attendee. I was like, wow, I've spent how much money for this? This is crazy. Like, hotels were so expensive. And yeah, and a plane ticket, because I'm from Maine, I think it was Vegas the first time. It was like $500 or $600, and I was like, I really hope this is worth it. It did. Like, just like a quick short-term thing is 2 weeks after that, I had met Jade Craven at Blog World, and actually it wasn't 2 weeks. I think it was about 2 months after, because it was October. She listed me on the top bloggers to watch on ProBlogger.
Cool.
So mine was the first, my face was the first one. And so everyone was like, well, then who is this? And it started to just grow from there, just from meeting her. Like, she didn't say anything about adding me. She just added me, which is really, really fun, right?
Yeah, that's definitely cool. Like even from the last one you went to, I was seeing Pat was tweeting out, I mean, just little conversations back with people, back and forth, tweeting out and sharing on Facebook. I think I saw a photo of you with Pat and another guy on Facebook all together from the conference. So it was, yeah, there's so much that can come out of it.
And see, Pat's like the big guy, right? I always joke, oh my gosh, you're huge. Which is so, because I'm so much taller than he is. But it's hilarious. Pat's awesome, and I get so many emails from people who said, I love Pat, therefore I love you. One guy, actually, one big brother, his name's Dan Giesling, I guess, and I never met him, but he absolutely adores Pat and his work, and he tweeted out, the only reason why I'm going to your session at NMX is because you're a friend of Pat's. And I was like, sweet, I got another.
Yeah, there you go.
Person. Because I'm associated with Pat, and I mean, Pat's awesome, and that's why. But it's sort of interesting how that works. Just getting in a picture with all these people tagged, I got tons of new people on Facebook from that, and that's in person, which you wouldn't assume that you would be able to get really lots of social media interaction when you're in person, but you can.
Yeah, it's funny how the social media and the offline then comes and overlaps onto the online. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, is how to contact and connect with people online, offline, is what we were saying. So let's dig in a little bit more into that and to how this has been able to affect you as a brand. Now, you said you were back there 6 months into building The Eventual Millionaire. What happened after that event, after getting on those blogs? What happened after that?
Well, it's kind of funny. It's hard to really know what influenced what, because a week after I came back from Blog World that very first time, I was featured on CNN. I was on their TV show. My face was on the homepage of Yahoo. So it's kind of hard to sort of know what influenced what. I mean, it was a lot of different things. The thing specifically that the Blog World did was it set up a lot of key relationships that I have with people now. And so now I went back to Blog World in New York and spoke there, and now everybody's my friend, and so we can hang out. Like when I was in NMX last week, we went go-karting, we did a whole bunch of really cool, amazing stuff together as friends, because that's what we do. And that's what I think, just to tell you one story that sort of shows the power. Someone from Maine is calling me. Actually, in school. I'll have to get that in a second. One of the things that was really powerful is I went to the World Domination Summit, and I met Dane Maxwell, who actually I've interviewed. I don't know if you know about Dane. Really cool guy. Ended up hanging out, becoming friends. He has the #1 interview on Mixergy, right? So he knows Andrew really well. Andrew had said no to me, because I really wanted to get Andrew Warner on the show. I don't know if you know. I know, right? Why would he say no?
How dare he?
I know. So he had said no to me, and when people say no to me, I go, well, now I'm going to figure out a way to get them to say yes. I'm just like that apparently. And so I met Dane and I was like, ooh, can I name drop you when I go talk to Andrew? And what ended up happening, which I find really interesting, and this sort of shows the power of networking. So I met Dane and I met Michael Stelzner from Social Media Examiner at Blogworld. He mentioned that I could do a post for him. I was like, perfect. And I started writing up the post and I went, you know what? I should contact Andrew Warner to see if he would, if I could get some questions answered to put him in this guest post on Social Media Examiner. It was perfect because it was about podcasting. Mm-hmm. It made sense. So I tweeted Andrew. He doesn't know who I was whatsoever. I sent him a quick tweet and said, I'm going to be doing a guest post for a blog that has 160,000 subscribers. I'd love to add you in it. Can we chat? 5 minutes later, he sends me a DM with his phone number and says, let's chat now.
Awesome.
And I'm like, sweet, that worked.
My phone. I'm calling.
Then, because I had built that relationship with Dane, I was able to say, oh yeah, I was just hanging out with Dane 2 weeks ago, and I know he knows you really well. And that starts to build a relationship with Andrew. So I helped Andrew, number one. I put him in that post. He knows that I'm okay because if Dane likes me, and Dane, I was like, Dane just sent me a $300 tea maker because I helped him out. Like, you know what I mean? All these things that sort of help go, oh, wait, maybe she is really cool.
Yep.
And then it just started going from there. We had a great hour-long conversation, and I go, so you said no to me before. Is there any way that I can get you to say yes? And he was like, do it. And so, yeah, and he had me on Talk to the Top with David Siteman Garland because he wanted to work with me more. And it's just one of those things that starts to snowball and snowball as you know people in the field. And I feel like that's, to me, connecting with people is huge. So that just sort of shows you a tangible benefit of how things happen.
I love it. Now, one thing that I would be worried about is, okay, you're someone, like you went there when you were 6 months in, and like you said, no one knew who you were. Or no, I guess I shouldn't say no one, but not many people knew who you were yet. And you go there and you don't want to, I can just see people going to these events and just being too pushy with people and too aggressive and going up and saying, hi, this is my blog. Can I interview you? Can I do a post on your blah, blah, blah? And I can see that being really off-putting from someone like, think of Pat Flynn. Like everyone wants to meet Pat and everyone wants to just talk to him for a second. So for you being someone that's gone there as an attendee and also as a speaker, what would you say is the best way for an attendee to approach someone in a way of forming a genuine yet beneficial relationship?
I have 1,000 tips for this.
Awesome.
Okay. So, because that's the thing, right? And when I was there last week, I had people coming up and telling me all about their stuff, and I know that not to be any way, motherly or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's so cute because they don't know yet. They haven't been told yet that the first thing that you do is not come up and go, hi, I have this blog and it does this. And somebody gave me a CD with all their interviews on it. And I'm like, that's really awesome, but I don't have time to look at that. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Keep going, but sorry.
Yeah.
So that is not the right way. What you want to do is you want to put yourself on the same level as them. A lot of the times when people come up, they go, oh my gosh, I love you so much. Oh, you're so great. Or somebody was like, I was so nervous to talk to you. That sort of puts them on a separate level. And if you're looking to actually be friends with them, you have to be confident in yourself enough to know that you're cool enough to be friends with them. So what I did, going back when I was attendee the very, very first time, I ended up going and contacting as many people as I possibly could before I went.
Smart.
So Pat was already a member of my mastermind group beforehand. And now Pat said no to me first also, by the way. And I totally got him to say yes also. So no to me first. I got to say yes. I'm very proud of those if you can't tell. But so Pat and I had been chatting in a mastermind group for probably about 3 months before I met him. But the plan, and I didn't even, he had his baby there. I only got to see him for like 5 minutes. That wasn't sort of my go-to plan. I also, beforehand, started building a relationship with a guy named Nathan Hangen, who doesn't actually blog anymore, but knew everybody else. And I started building that relationship up way before I was going, like months before. We ended up chatting. We ended up doing a little mentorship relationship. I helped him with a bunch of different stuff. He helped me. And so when I went to Blog World, we were already friends.
Cool.
And he was able to go, oh, let me introduce you to Jamie. Let me introduce you, you know, she's cool. Let me introduce you to everybody else. That's the best way to get to meet people because then you're on the same field. Like I had a friend, NMX this time. His name's Roderick Russell. He's coming out with a blog. He doesn't even have a blog yet, right? And usually people are like, well, I don't want to like go meet people if I don't have a blog. He's part of Pat and I's mastermind group.
Mm-hmm.
And we went around and introduced him to absolutely everyone we know as he's he's a sword swallower and a mind reader. So
Whoa.
You should look at the pictures on Facebook. Pat posted a whole bunch. Like
I'm on it. I'll be doing that right after the interview.
I have to post it underneath the interview. So he has a little bit of an advantage, right? That's really crazy. But in general, like he already knew that going in, he was going to be introduced to absolutely everyone that was sort of, I mean, I hate to call them bigger names, you know what I mean? But the people that are popular in this space. And so that's what I suggest. Try and go out and build those relationships way before, so that way you can already be part. Because one of the other things is you go in groups when you're networking. You end up sort of going in groups. And if you, this actually happened to me the other day, because there are many people who are much higher level than me, right? And I'm friends with Derek Halpern. And I went to a conference and I was hanging out with him and he's like, oh, we're going out to dinner. And he went out, or we went out to a bar or something like that. And he went out with Ramit Sethi and Tim Ferriss. And then I ended up going to the movies with Tim Ferriss and his girlfriend Nisha, a friend of mine. And I'm going like, if I didn't know Derek, there is no way I would ever have gotten to do things like that too. So really, unfortunately, it is kind of who you know and who your friends are. But you sort of have to prove yourself as being one of the top % ones, and that way you can go ahead and become friends with them too, if that helps.
No, that really does, and it's interesting. Like you say, it's all about and the connections and the networking, but it's the same with this as it is with most business. It's the people. A lot of times, it's the people the connections that you make. And what I would be worried about is people that okay, I need to make these connections before I go, but they need to be genuine connections. And if people think that you're just trying to connect with them because you want to use their clout and their power or whatever, you know what I mean, then it's not going to be, they're going to sense it a mile away. I mean, they're going to see it. So how can you make connections with people that are more genuine before these type of things, and even in general?
Really, really great question. So when I talked about how I met Nate Hangen beforehand, the reason why I connected with him is because he loves Buddhism and Ayn Rand. And I was like, me too. We ended up chatting for a really long time. And so that to me is the key. Like you're not going to just go find someone because you find someone, but you go and you look at their blog. Like Chris Brogan loves comic books. I loved comic books. Like so much. I had so many comic books. And so when I was speaking and he was speaking at the same place, I'm like, we can talk about comic books, you know what I mean? We can talk about superheroes. So it's really, to me, about finding where those connections are, because I'm passionate about that stuff. I love talking about it. That's not ingenuine whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And I'm lucky enough to have tons of cool stuff that I'm passionate about that apparently a lot of other people are passionate about. And so it's much easier to go and find those connections. I wouldn't go and find someone and be like, hi, will you be my friend? This Right. It's not about that at all. It's about really trying to find something that really connects you guys. And then that's how we do it in general anyway. That's how we build friendships in general anyway. It's the same exact thing.
When they called you back, when New Media Expo called you back to do a speaking gig there, well, I was actually going to ask you, did they contact you or did you express interest in speaking there first? How'd that work?
So this is sort of the process. The first time I spoke was... actually only like 6 months ago. I spoke at World Domination Summit and I spoke at New Media Expo just like within a month in a row. And so what you do is they call for speaker applications, right? Everybody from high level, besides their keynotes, everybody submits. Pat does, everybody does. And so you submit a speaker's proposal. And in that speaker's proposal, you have to really try and make it so that they want you, right? They want certain content every year, like more cutting edge, every year, but they need to know about podcasting. They need to know about this. They need to know about this because there's always new people coming in. So you can kind of get a general idea if you look back through the previous ones, what they're doing things on, and then you try and craft a proposal having to do with that.
Sure.
And that's sort of how it is. It's really tough. I mean, I think they said um, it's like 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 or something like that, maybe gets accepted. They don't have that many. I mean, they have quite a few speakers, but they have a ton of applicants, and so a lot of people get rejected, and that sucks. Doesn't mean you. I mean, I've gotten rejected before. I know Adam Baker's gotten rejected before, so that's not a big deal either. Just so you know. The reason why I got rejected is because I didn't do that. I didn't look back and see the topics that they talked about. I actually said I should talk about how creating a mastermind group will make your blog go much better. And that really didn't fit, that really didn't fit what they had to say. So failure, total failure. And I did it again, and it wasn't a big deal. So you do have to go ahead and if you do want to speak, you have to do that and go through the whole process, and then they let you know and all that fun stuff. And you get a free ticket. So they don't even pay you.
So they don't pay you. Do they pay for your plane ticket?
Nope.
So you were going out there. You're gonna get you're gonna get a lot of exposure, is what you're gonna get. That's what you're getting paid in.
Yes. So when you become a speaker, you get to go to the speaker's room. You get to tell everybody you're a speaker. Woohoo! But they also do a lot of different things where they try and have you, like I did, I don't know how many interviews. So they have things set up where you just keep doing quite a few different interviews on a whole bunch of different platforms. And so they do a lot of stuff with that, which is good. And they have a speaker's reception and dinner and all that stuff. So I know, fancy.
Fancy. Now, I checked out your page on the New Media Expo blog or website, and it says that you talked about how to create amazing interviews for your podcast. Were you nervous when you went to give that?
So funny. I don't know what it was. I texted my friend and I was like, I'm not nervous. Is that bad? Like usually, before you speak, everybody gets nervous.
Of course.
And this time I wasn't, and I was going, this is really weird. I go, it's either going to go really, really well or really, really bad. It went really well. I love speaking in general, and yeah, everybody gets nervous when they first go up. And that's okay. That's totally fine. And I never in a million years thought I would be a speaker. Let me just say that too. When I was younger, I did a speech at a local place, and a friend of my mother's was there, and she's like, I never in a million years thought the little girl who drew, like I was an artist and read all the time and stayed in the corner and didn't want to be, just don't look at me, I'm fine. So it's very, like, it took a while and it took a lot, and I went to Toastmasters and all that stuff, but now I love speaking.
How many people attended your session?
It was packed. It was standing room only. I was really impressed. I'm like Pat Flynn. I had standing room only. No, I don't know how many people were actually there, but it was really cool. One of my friends took a photo of what it looked like, and I'm like, wow, all the seats are filled. That's really cool.
Is that photo on Facebook?
I think so.
Okay, I'll have to check that out too.
Yeah.
And okay, so you talked about creating amazing interviews for your podcast. Tell me a little bit about what you talked about, because this is very interesting for me. So let's talk about that.
Definitely. Now the cool thing is I keep getting emails from people going, well, how can I get that content? And last time they gave it to me, so I'm going to put it up on my podcast.
Cool.
Which will be good because I won't remember it all right now, and we don't have enough time anyway. But a couple of the really cool pieces that, like what you're doing. One of the things that I found really interesting that I always say and give advice for is to be relaxed, right? That's one of the biggest things that I've heard. I try and make the guest as relaxed as possible, just like you did at the beginning. Try and make it so it's not a big thing. Because especially if you're interviewing someone that's not used to being interviewed, it can be a challenge. If somebody's used to it, it's not that big of a deal, but it's really good to get them comfortable.
Sorry, Jamie, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you interview millionaires, so it might not happen as much for you. But for me, I'll get people on, and they'll be like, I can tell it's the first time they're being interviewed, and they're like, okay, what do I need to do? I'm like, okay, calm down. If something bad happens, we can start over. If you really mess up, we can edit it. I can do it again. Just be calm. Pour yourself a whiskey if you want. Like it's fine. No one's gonna know. No one's gonna know what's in that coffee cup. Like it's fine.
This is a really big bottle. No,
It's a nice vodka you got there.
Oh Oh, you know what's funny? I'm totally going to give a plug. Not that anyone is necessarily listening to this in Maine, but my friend Rich, who's from Maine, has a conference called Agents of Change. We're trying to bring really cool social media people to Maine. I spoke last year. I'm going to speak there this year. We're trying to have Chris Ducker said he'd come. I don't know if he really will, but a whole bunch of people that are really awesome coming to Maine. Yay. Derek Halpern came last time. Chris Brogan was there. It was a super fun time.
Where was it? In Portland or?
Yeah.
They never come up to Bangor. And that's where I'm from, for everyone listening. And no one knows where Bangor and Portland are. But Bangor is more, I'm further up in Maine. It's kind of like the last drop-off point before you just get to all woods and lakes. So, but you're more in the urban area.
Yes, as urban as we can get in Maine. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but sorry, plug for that. But yeah, that is one specific tip. And the other tip, if I just have to give a couple, is to actually listen, right?
What was that?
So, like, the very first interview I did, I was horrible, and I interviewed Frank McKinney, and he was an old pro. Like, you could tell he'd done this 1,000 times, and I, like, had my paper, and I'm, like, shaking, and, like, I have, like, 27 questions written down, and I'm trying to, like, thank goodness it was all audio, because I was, like, bright red and shaking. And with this microphone going, okay, and, don't go back and listen to it. It's just bad. I said the word excellent, I think, like 79 times. After he said anything, I was like, excellent.
Excellent.
For our next question. So bad. I don't even know if I remember what he said at all, you know? And so that's not good.
Usually, Jamie, I say, I'll link up to that. But now I'll do you a favor and I won't link up to that.
You. Link up to the one I recently did with Seth Godin. That was great. Thank you. Well, and that's sort of the thing. Really making sure, like, I don't prep questions. Like, this piece of paper, I'm interviewing Dan Miller very shortly, and this is my notes. I don't know if you can see them. There's like 3 questions. And so I don't prep that much. Actually, I did a bunch of research. I asked Andrew Warner what his best tips were. I asked David Siteman Garland what his best tips were. And I ended up doing a bunch of research and finding, like, what Larry King does and how you be a really good interviewer. And one of the things that Larry King said is to don't prepare too much, because you only want to have the level that you might want to have a little bit more than the level of your audience member. Because what I was doing before is I would go through and read all their books, and I'd be like, well, on this page you talked about this. And of course, they don't even remember what they talked about on that page, let alone anyone else. And I think that's really important to know. It's not about that. It's about trying to give your audience member exactly what they want. So to me, all I do right now is I try and get the gist of exactly what I want. And I ask questions. And then I ask deeper questions like, oh, tell me more about that. Give me an example about that. And just try and dig and dig and dig. And I'm really proud of the interview I did with Seth, because Seth Godin has been interviewed so many times it's ridiculous. And the biggest piece of feedback I've been getting from everyone is that, oh my gosh, it was so different. It wasn't like all the other ones. It was so valuable because I learned so much different stuff. I mean, he talks about the same thing in most interviews. And that was sort of my goal, to go, I can ask Seth Godin anything I want. What do I want to ask that he hasn't been asked before? And so it's just really fun to be able to ask stuff that hasn't been talked about. And it makes it a lot more fun for the guest. Like, you're asking me questions that I normally don't get asked about. I normally say my regular spiel. And not that I want to do this, but sometimes it's sort of like, and I blah, 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 and I did this. And
it's funny though. It's funny though, because I knew at the beginning part of the interview, sometimes I hate, when I interview people that get interviewed all the time, I hate asking them in the beginning to tell about themselves, because I know they've done it a million times, but it's at least a little bit, it's a little necessary for the people that just haven't heard about them. And it's funny, you can tell, like I could tell with you today that you just went right into it, and it was, you've done it a million times before, but it's when you get into the juicy parts and you get into the different things, and it makes it much more interesting and enjoyable for both people.
Well, I agree. I do the exact same thing. I don't necessarily like asking, oh, how did you start? Or what do you tell me about yourself, or anything like that. But I've tried not doing it, and that's worse.
I agree.
It starts off on a weird, like, what's your favorite color? You know what I mean? Or whatever. Not that I did that, but whatever it is. It does take a little bit of warm up anyway, just to get your pacing. Yeah. It's a good good question, even if it sounds very put together and okay. Because then after a while, see, I talk with my hands when I get excited. So I'm talking with my hands. We're fine now.
Cool, Jamie. Well, I don't want to tie you up for too long here. Is there anything else that you wanted to mention today before we wrap it up, especially specifically about connecting with people at conferences?
Building your network is one of the biggest things that you can do. And the best way to do it actually is an interview show, which is kind of funny. So we would have never met before if you didn't ask to interview me. And Pat knew who you were. We mentioned you on our mastermind call. He's like, oh, he's from Maine. Because so it's sort of that's an amazing thing. And I think you don't necessarily have to have an interview show, but I even suggest, like my mentor, to start a podcast just to get interviews, right? Even if it's only 10. Even if you're like, these 10 people are influencers I really want to meet, I would love to just start a little series. Doesn't take that much, just so that way you can start building real relationships that way. So not that everybody has to do this, it depends on your business, but even offline businesses, if you want to get through gatekeepers and reach people, it's one of the best ways that you can do it. So just sort of a point to put out there too.
Yeah, and I'll put in there as well, even if you mentioned that, okay, and not everyone's going to want to do an interview show, but if you are going to go to a conference and you're in another niche, maybe you're in real estate or something, and you want to connect with some bigger name people, reach out to them before and interview them. Because then when you go there, you won't have to come up to them and say, hi, I do this, blah, blah, blah. You'll see them and go, hey, how's it going, Mitch? And they'll know who you are, and from that handshake, and they'll introduce you to other people around them. It's going to be like you're an old friend and part of the gang.
Exactly. 1,000 times over, exactly. Definitely.
Cool, Jamie. Well, if people want to reach out and find you, where can they reach you at other than Eventual Millionaire? Is there anything else that you're working on that you want to mention before we wrap it up here?
Book right now. That's what I'm working on.
Book?
Yeah. Yes.
Ooh.
Working on I just signed the paperwork last
Nice.
week. So yeah, really fun. I would suggest just go to Eventual Millionaire because you can check out all the interviews are free. And you can get the top habits of millionaires, right? That's what everyone wants to know. Well, what do they do? Tell me what they do. And so if you're looking for that, you can sign up for that and get that right away too.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, Mike, from Maine.
I hope you enjoyed the show today. Make sure you go to eventualmillionaire.com and sign up for Jamie's email list. You can find out the 3 habits of all successful millionaires. Just put your name and email in there and sign up. Also, go to mikefrommaine.com/iTunes and go in there, and if you can leave me a 5-star review, I will give you a shout out in the next show, and you will have my never-ending gratitude. Thank you so much for watching, listening, reading. I will see you all on Monday. Oh, and before I forget, for those of you interested, I will be releasing my revenue report this weekend, either Saturday or Sunday. So if you are signed up for my email list, you'll get a notification that it's up and ready to go. How did I do in December? You'll find out. See you Monday.